From the News Channel 5 Network, this is Inside Politics.
Hello, everyone. I'm News Channel 5's political analyst, Pat Nolan. Welcome to Inside Politics. When I was in college at Vanderbilt, I majored in political science and I minored in history. But this past week on the presidential campaign trail, there were developments that no teacher, no textbook, no class ever prepared me for. Also, they were the kind of developments that weren't on the tests either. So we've asked local presidential historian Dan Mallock to join us on Inside Politics this week. He's going to bring us his insights and his wisdom on how to make sense on what's going on the campaign trail, how it compares to past presidential races, and where this election and the country might stand as we enter these final weeks of the presidential campaign with the election on November 8th. Dan, thanks for joining us again on the show.
Thank you, sir. Honored to be here.
Let's start with the obvious. Have you ever seen or studied a presidential race quite like this one? And from your knowledge and perspective, what races might you compare this one to?
No, I've never seen it.
Is it incomparable?
Yeah, it is incomparable. I've never seen anything like this in presidential politics in my lifetime, certainly since I've been aware of politics at all. I can compare it to the election of 1800 that was so vitriolic and so much on the line insofar as a philosophy of government was concerned, that whoever would win, be it Adams and Jefferson, the country would go in a different direction.
Hey, you studied that. Adams was seen, one of the criticisms of him was he was likely to be a royalist, almost a monarchist. That's how he viewed government. And Jefferson was criticized because they thought he didn't have religion, that he was a deist.
Well, this allegation or slander against Adams is false. He always denied it. Never was proven by Jefferson, and in their correspondence he said, look, I'm not a monarchist. We've never talked about government together. I don't know why you think this thing. The only thing that's really monarchist about me is that, you know, I might wear a wig and powder and you don't. You wear jeans and slippers when you meet diplomats.
Now, there were no videotapes, there were no emails in most of the past campaigns that we've had for president, but we've had elections where the candidates had to deal with scandals, and one that comes to mind for me, if you're here in Tennessee, is 1824 and 1828, when Andrew Jackson and John Quincy Adams went after each other twice. Tell me how you think the current race sort of compares to that, just in terms of having scandals that both kind of had to deal with, particularly Jackson.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying about scandals, and certainly we're seeing those now almost daily with Mr. Trump, and certainly in the past with Mrs. Clinton. But what really strikes me insofar as similarity between now and 1824 and 1828 is that you have an established president, establishment kind of person going against an outsider. You can't get much more outside than Mr. Trump, and certainly Andrew Jackson was profoundly an outsider, not a politician, military officer, general, hero of 1812, the Battle of New Orleans, and very much anti-establishment. So when he got into office and had this great conflict with the Second National Bank and the leader of that institution, Nicholas Biddle, he said, this bank is trying to kill me, but I'm going to kill them first. I'm going to kill it
And Jackson
first.
was a competitive kind of person.
Oh, totally.
If you were crossed with him, you might wind up in a duel.
You might wind up dead. Yeah.
Now, in some other conversations we've had, you've indicated to me you think Donald Trump might be the 21st century version of Andrew Jackson in some ways?
Yeah, I think it's very similar. He's such an outsider. He's such a populist, and it's ironic because here he is, a multi-millionaire, billionaire from the heights of business, who really resonates with the population, the people. This is very similar, in my view, to Jefferson and how he approached his election and his administration. Like I said, he wore jeans. He did everything he could to disentangle himself from tradition, so that when the British ambassador and his wife would show up to visit, he would do everything to insult them indirectly, without insulting them to their face verbally, to show his disdain for European traditions. He would meet them in slippers. There was a story I was reading the other day where he met the British ambassador fully dressed in all his finery. Jefferson shows up in his night clothes, unkempt, and wearing his slippers, sits down and starts bouncing his slipper up in the air off his feet and landing it on his foot while he's talking to the British ambassador, who was completely horrified.
Now, Thomas Jefferson spent a lot of time in France. Did he dress differently when the French ambassador came?
Fair enough. I don't know. But in France, he dressed very much like an aristocrat.
Now, there are very few state polls out there. You talked about Trump being sort of a 21st century Andrew Jackson. But there are very few polls out there that show that Trump is leading right now. Do you believe those polls are accurate?
I think there's something to be said about Mr. Trump's skepticism and concern. Not only his concern, but many people have this concern that there's bias in the media toward the Democratic candidate. And we've seen this documented in the WikiLeaks disclosures. So I'm very skeptical about these polls.
Now, it appears no matter which candidate wins on November 8th, at least 40%, maybe a little more, of the electorate is going to be very unhappy, not only with who wins, but sort of the state of the country. Does that compare in any way to you to what Abraham Lincoln faced in this country when he took office in 1861 and we were just about to go into the Civil War? Is it that serious?
Yes, it's a very scary comparison, and I think it's fairly accurate. I've had actually people who are highly educated, historians and scholars, talk to me who are on the right in their politics, say that there's so much on the line that if Mr. Trump is defeated, that secession ought to be considered. I find that incredibly disturbing, because I think there's only two things that can really unite us as a people, as a polity, and that is respect for the Constitution and for the Union, that both of those things must be respected and upheld. And if one falls, then we're at real risk and trouble as a country.
Presidential historian Dan Mallock is our guest on Inside Politics. We'll continue to talk about this race and how it compares back through the years. Stay with us on Inside Politics. We'll be back after these messages.